The dust covered everything. Sareth's armor was cracked in 3 places, and her left arm had stopped bleeding only because the wound had sealed itself with dried blood. Around her, the bodies of her warriors lay still. They had died well, fighting to give the villagers time to escape into the mountains. Now she stood alone. The Vryn soldiers formed a circle around her. She counted 50 of them, maybe more. Their gray armor reflected the setting sun, and their weapons hummed with deadly energy. They moved slowly, carefully, like hunters who knew their prey was cornered. Sarath gripped her spear tighter. The weapon had been in her family for 7 generations. Its blue energy blade flickered and sparked. The power core was failing. She had used it too much in the last 3 days of fighting. The weapon that had never failed her ancestors was dying in her hands. The Vryn commander stepped forward. He was tall, even for his species, and his armor had marks of high rank. He said in her language, "You fought well. Your people can die with honor, or you can live as slaves. Choose." Sareth showed her teeth. It was not a smile. "My people choose freedom," she said. "And I choose to send as many of you as possible to whatever hell waits for your kind." The commander nodded slowly. "So be it." She charged. Her legs burned with exhaustion, but she pushed forward. The spear came up for a strike. 3 Vryn soldiers moved to block her path. She aimed for the gap between them. The spear connected with the first soldier's shield. Energy crackled. The weapon shook in her hands. She pushed harder, trying to break through. Then she heard it. A sound like breaking glass, but louder. The spear's core was splitting apart. She had 1 second to realize what was happening. The energy blade exploded outward in all directions. The blast threw her backward through the air. She hit the ground hard, rolling across the rocky earth. Her ears rang, her vision blurred. When she could see again, she was lying on her back. The spear was gone. Only the handle remained, smoking and useless. She tried to stand, but her body would not obey. Everything hurt. The Vryn soldiers closed in. They moved faster now, knowing she was helpless. Sareth managed to push herself up on 1 elbow. She would face death on her feet if she could. She tried again to stand. That was when the sky screamed. Something fell from the clouds like a meteor. It was too fast to see clearly. The air itself seemed to tear apart with a sound that made her teeth ache. The Vryn soldiers looked up, confused. The object hit the ground in the middle of the Vryn formation. The impact threw soldiers in every direction. Dust and smoke exploded outward. Sareth covered her face with her arm. When the dust cleared, she saw a figure standing in a crater. It wore armor, but not like any armor she had seen before. The armor was damaged and smoking. Pieces of a parachute and some kind of emergency pack lay scattered around the crater. The figure straightened up and rolled its shoulders. It was smaller than the Vryn, but moved with easy confidence. The armor's helmet retracted, and Sareth saw a face. It was a human. She had heard of them but never seen one. He had short dark hair and a face covered in several days of beard growth. He looked at the Vryn soldiers, then at Sarath, then back at the soldiers. He smiled. It was the kind of smile that made Sarath think he was either very brave or very crazy. "Mind if I join the fight?" the human said. He did not wait for an answer. His hand moved to his side and came up with a weapon. It looked primitive compared to Vryn technology, but when it fired, 3 soldiers fell. The human moved like water, rolling behind cover before the Vryn could return fire. The Vryn commander shouted orders. His soldiers spread out, trying to surround both Sarath and this new enemy. But the human did not fight like a warrior. He fought like a wild animal, using every advantage he could find. He grabbed a piece of debris and threw it at one soldier, then shot another while the first was distracted. He dove, rolled, and came up shooting. When his weapon ran dry, he did not reload. Instead, he charged at the nearest Vryn. ducked under the soldier's swing, and punched him in the throat. While that soldier fell, the human took his weapon and used it. Sereth had trained her whole life in the warrior's code. Every move had a name, a purpose, a place in the dance of combat. This human knew none of that. Severman. We have the Severman. He fought with no honor, no form, no rules. He just fought to win. And somehow, it was working. A Vryn soldier aimed at the human from behind. Sereth found strength she did not know she had. She grabbed a rock and threw it. Her aim was true. The stone hit the soldier's helmet, and he stumbled. The human spun and fired without even looking, and the soldier fell. The human looked at Sereth and grinned. "Can you walk?" "I can fight," she said, though she was not sure it was true. "Good enough," the human said. He pointed at a Vryn transport vehicle at the edge of the battle. "We're stealing that. Can you cover me?" Sereth looked around. She found a fallen Vryn weapon and picked it up. The weight was wrong. The balance was off. But it would fire. "Go," she said. They ran together through chaos. The human moved ahead, shooting and dodging. Sereth followed, her body screaming with every step. She fired the stolen weapon until it overheated, then threw it at a pursuing soldier and picked up another. They reached the transport. The human jumped into the pilot's seat, and his hands flew over controls he had never seen before. The engine roared to life. "Get in!" he shouted. Sereth pulled herself into the passenger seat. The transport lurched forward, bounced over rough ground, and then lifted into the air. The human wrestled with the controls, and the vehicle spun wildly before he got it steady. Vryn soldiers fired at them. Energy blasts hit the transport's shields. The human pushed the vehicle faster, heading for the mountains. Only when they were far from the battle did Sereth speak. "Who are you?" The human glanced at her. "Jake Morrison," he said. "Cargo pilot." "Well, former cargo pilot. My ship got shot down yesterday. You came to help us?" Jake laughed. It was a tired sound. "Not exactly. I was trying to reach my ship when I saw you down there. Figured I'd lend a hand on the way." Sereth stared at him. This human had fallen from the sky, joined a fight that was not his, and saved her life. All without being asked. She did not understand. "Thank you," she said finally. Jake shrugged. "Don't mention it. Now, where's this resistance headquarters you people have? Because I've got a ship to find, and something tells me you've got a war to win." The stolen transport crashed in the forest 3 hours later. Jake pulled the controls hard to the left, but the vehicle had taken too much damage. It clipped a tree and spun, throwing both of them against their restraints before slamming into the ground. Sereth groaned as she unbuckled herself. Jake was already out of his seat, checking a small device on his wrist. "They'll track this thing," he said. "We need to move. Can you walk?" She forced herself to stand. Pride would not let her show weakness to this strange human. They moved into the thick forest. Jake led the way, somehow knowing which direction to go. His wrist device blinked with a soft blue light. Sereth watched him move through the undergrowth. He was loud compared to a Keth warrior. He snapped branches and kicked stones. But he moved fast and did not complain. After an hour, Jake stopped. He checked his device again and nodded. "Good. My ship is 40 kilometers that way." He pointed northwest. "If we keep moving and avoid Vryn patrols, we can make it in 2 days." 2 days? Sereth's wounds needed treatment soon. She could feel infection starting in her arm. Jake looked at her closely. His eyes were sharp. "You're hurt bad, aren't you?" "I will manage." "Right." He did not sound convinced. He dug in a pack at his belt and pulled out a small kit. "First aid." "Sit down." Sereth wanted to refuse, but her legs made the choice for her. She sat heavily against a tree. Jake opened the kit and examined her wounds. His hands were gentle, but sure. He cleaned the worst of them with something that stung and made her gasp. "Sorry," he said. Human antiseptic. Probably burns like hell for your species. He wrapped her arm with bandages that felt warm against her skin. Biofoam dressing. It'll help with infection and speed up healing. Not as good as a real medical bay, but better than nothing. Why do you help me? Sareth asked. Your ship is in the opposite direction. You could move faster without me. Jake sealed the bandages and sat back. Yeah, I could. But I'm not going to leave you here to die. That's not how humans work. How do humans work? He thought about that while he packed his kit away. We're pack animals. Social creatures. We don't leave our people behind. He looked at her. And right now, you're my people. We're in this together. Sareth did not understand. But something in his words made her chest feel tight. Among her people, warriors fought together because of duty and honor. This human fought beside her because he simply chose to. It made no tactical sense. But somehow, they rested for 30 minutes. Jake shared his rations with her. The food was strange and very spicy, but it gave her energy. As the twin moons rose, they started moving again. The night was long. They heard Vryn patrols twice and had to hide. Jake seemed to know exactly when to freeze and when to run. His instincts were good, even if his methods were strange. As dawn broke, they found a place to rest in a cave. Jake set up a small device at the entrance that he said would warn them if anything approached. Then he made a tiny fire with a tool that created flames from nothing. Sareth watched him work. You said your ship was shot down. How did that happen? Jake fed the fire with dry moss. I was hauling cargo through this sector. Medical supplies for a colony on the other side of Vryn space. They jumped me near the planet. My ship, the Betty Lou. She's tough, but she's not a fighter. I managed to crash land in the mountains instead of burning up. He smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. Lost my whole cargo, though. People needed that medicine. You risked your life to bring medicine to strangers? That's the job. He shrugged. Besides, the pay was good, but Sareth heard something in his voice that said it was not just about payment. You have done this before. Helped people you do not know. Jake was quiet for a moment. 6 months ago, Vryn raiders hit a colony I was visiting. Killed a lot of people. Including my crew. 3 good people who were like family to me. His jaw tightened. So yeah. When I see Vryn hurting people, I tend to get involved. Understanding dawned in Sareth. This is personal for you. Everything's personal, Jake said. The Vryn think they can take whatever they want, hurt whoever they want, and no one will stop them. Someone needs to prove them wrong. They sat in silence for a while. Then Sareth spoke. My people have a saying, the warrior who fights for honor will die with honor. But the warrior who fights for love will never truly die. Jake looked at her. That's actually pretty good. You fight for love, Sareth said. Love of your lost crew. Love of people you will never meet. This makes you strong. Or stupid, Jake said. But he was smiling. My friends always said I had more guts than brains. Among my people, we would call you a berserker. One who fights beyond reason, beyond sense. They are feared and respected. I'll take it. Jake stretched and checked his wrist device. We should sleep in shifts. You first. I'll keep watch. Sareth wanted to argue, but exhaustion won. She lay down on her good side and closed her eyes. Before sleep took her, she heard Jake humming something. A human song, strange and off-key, but somehow comforting. She woke to Jake, shaking her shoulder urgently. We've got company, he whispered. Big company. Through the cave entrance, she saw movement in the forest. Vryn soldiers, at least 20 of them, moving in a search pattern. They had tracked the stolen transport and were following the trail. Jake checked his weapon. Half a magazine left. Not enough for all of them. He looked at Sareth. Can you fight? Her body screamed. No. But she said, yes. Okay. Here's the plan. There is no plan. We make it up as we go. Sareth stared at him. That is your strategy? Always works for me. Jake grinned. Well, I'm still alive. So, it works sometimes. Ready? Always. 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 The Vryn were getting closer. Sareth picked up a rock in each hand. Her injuries made holding weapons difficult, but she could throw. Ready. Ready. On 3, Jake whispered. 1, 2. He did not wait for 3. He ran out of the cave, yelling something in his human language. The Vryn turned toward him, surprised. In that moment of confusion, Jake threw something small and black at their feet. The grenade exploded with thunder and light. Vryn soldiers fell. Sareth ran from the cave, throwing her rocks at the stunned survivors. Her aim was true. 2 soldiers went down. Jake moved through the smoke like a ghost. He had no honor, no form, no rules. He kicked, punched, shot, and grabbed whatever weapons he could from fallen enemies. It was chaos. It was brutal. It was effective. Sareth found herself fighting beside him, matching his wild rhythm. Her formal training mixed with his improvisation. When he went low, she went high. When he drew attention, she struck from the side. They moved together like they had trained together for years. The last Vryn soldier ran. Jake let him go. They stood among the bodies, breathing hard. Jake's armor was cracked. Sareth's wounds had reopened, but they were alive. Not bad, Jake said. You're learning to fight dirty. You are learning to fight smart, Sareth replied. He laughed. Come on. My ship's not far now. We can both use that medical bay. They walked together into the morning sun, an unlikely pair bound by battle and a growing friendship neither of them had expected to find. The Betty Lou was hidden in a mountain cave that Jake had covered with camouflage netting. Sareth stared at the ship as they approached. It was ugly by Ketheron standards. All sharp angles and mismatched panels. It looked like someone had built it from spare parts and hope. She's beautiful, isn't she? Jake said proudly. Sareth did not answer. Beauty was not the word she would use. The ship's ramp lowered as they got close. A young human male appeared at the top, holding a weapon. When he saw Jake, he lowered it and grinned. About time. I was starting to think you got yourself killed. Almost did, Jake said. Danny. Meet Sareth. Sareth. This is Danny Chen, my co-pilot, and the guy who keeps this rust bucket flying. Danny was shorter than Jake, with black hair and quick eyes. He looked at Sareth with curiosity. A Keth? Jake. What did you do? Saved her life. She saved mine. Long story. Jake climbed the ramp. Get her to medical. I need to check the engines. The medical bay was small but clean. Danny worked quickly, scanning Sareth's injuries with devices that hummed and beeped. You're lucky, he said. Another day and this infection would have killed you. Jake's field dressing helped. But you need real medicine. He gave her injections that made her arm tingle. Then he applied fresh bandages that felt cool and soothing. While he worked, he talked. Humans seem to talk a lot. Jake does this all the time, Danny said. Picks up strays, gets into fights that aren't his problem, nearly dies. One time he stopped to help a broken-down transport and ended up in the middle of a civil war. We barely escaped that one. 10. Why does he do it? Sareth asked. Danny's smile faded. You'd have to ask him. But I think he feels like he has to. Like he needs to make up for all the people he couldn't save. 1. His crew. You know about that? Danny looked surprised. Yeah. That hit him hard. They were good people. He finished the bandages. But don't tell him I told you he's got a hero complex. He thinks he's just a cargo pilot who's unlucky. Sarath rested in the medical bay for an hour. When she felt strong enough, she found Jake in the engine room. He was deep inside a machine, cursing softly. Only his legs stuck out. "The Vryn damaged your ship?" she asked. "Yeah." His voice echoed from inside the machine. "Hit my port engine. I can fix it, but it'll take time." He pulled himself out, his face covered in grease. "Problem is, we don't have time." "What do you mean?" Jake led her to the bridge. Danny was there, listening to something through headphones. He looked worried. "Show her," Jake said. Danny pressed a button, and a recording played. It was in the Vryn language, which Sarath understood. Her blood went cold as she listened. "They are gathering an armada," she said quietly. "In 3 days," Jake confirmed. "We've been monitoring their communications. They're bringing everything. 50 ships, maybe more. They're going to burn Cathara Prime until nothing lives." Sarath felt her legs weaken. She sat down hard. "My people cannot stop that. We have no space fleet. We are ground fighters." "I know." Jake leaned against the console. "That's why I asked Danny to find your resistance headquarters frequency. We need to warn them." "Jake, warn them?" Sarath looked at him. "What good will that do? They cannot fight an armada. Maybe not alone." Jake's eyes had a strange light in them. "But what if they had help?" "From who?" "You have one damaged cargo ship. From me." "From us." Jake pointed at the star map on the screen. "The Vryn armada is gathering at this point. They'll jump to Cathara Prime together for maximum effect. Their flagship, the Dominion's Fist, will lead the formation." Sarath began to understand. "You want to attack them." "I want to take out that flagship. Without it, the armada loses its command and control. They'll scatter. Your people might have a chance." "That is insane," Sarath said. "This ship cannot fight a flagship. You will die." "Probably," Jake agreed. "But if we do nothing, your whole planet dies." "I'll take probably over." "Certainly," Danny spoke up. "I've been looking at the flagship's design. It has a weak point. If we can get close enough to hit the main reactor, we might be able to cause a chain reaction, but we'd need to get through their shields first." "Can we do that?" Sarath asked. "Maybe." Danny pulled up more data. "If we steal Vryn weapons and retrofit them to the Betty Lou, we might have enough firepower, and if we use debris fields as cover, we might get close before they see us." "Might." "Maybe." Sarath looked at both humans. "You would risk your lives on might? And maybe?" Jake smiled. "That's kind of our thing. Humans are good at long shots." "You are insane." "Yeah, we get that a lot." Jake turned to Danny. "How long to make the modifications?" 30 hours if we don't sleep." "Then we don't sleep." Jake looked at Sarath. "Contact your resistance. Tell them what we're planning. If they can launch a ground assault while we attack the armada, it might divide the Vryn forces enough to make a difference." Sarath stared at the two humans. They were planning to fight an armada with a cargo ship. It was the most foolish thing she had ever heard. It went against every tactical principle she had ever learned. But looking at their faces, she saw something that made her believe. They had hope, not the careful hope of a warrior who knows the odds. Unreasonable hope of beings who refuse to accept defeat. "My commanders will think you are mad," she said. "Tell them we're human," Jake said. That should explain it. Over the next 30 hours, they worked. Jake and Danny tore apart the ship and rebuilt it with stolen Vryn technology. Sarath contacted the Resistance and argued with her commanders. They did not believe the plan could work. But when she told them about Jake falling from the sky to save her, about him fighting beside her against impossible odds, they agreed to help, not because they believed they would win, but because the alternative was extinction. Sarath helped where she could. She learned about human technology, so different from her own. She watched Jake and Danny work together, finishing each other's sentences, moving in perfect sync. They trusted each other completely. On the second night, as Danny slept, Sareth found Jake on the bridge, staring at the stars. "You should rest," she said. "Can't. Too much to do." He did not look at her. "You should know. The odds of us surviving this are pretty low." "I know. You don't have to come. We can drop you somewhere safe first." Sareth sat beside him. "You jumped into a fight to save me when you did not even know my name. You carried me when I could not walk. You are trying to save my world when you could just run away." She met his eyes. "I will stand with you, however this ends." Jake was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. "You know, for someone from a warrior culture, you're learning to be pretty human. Is that good?" "Yeah," Jake said. "That's good." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars and preparing for a battle that would decide the fate of a world. And despite everything, despite the impossible odds, Sareth felt something she had not felt since the Vryn invasion began. She felt hope. The Betty Lou looked different now. Stolen Vryn weapons covered her hull like scales. Danny had rigged a stealth system from 3 different technologies that should not work together, but somehow did. The cargo bay was empty, except for one small escape pod that Jake had installed without telling anyone why. They sat on the bridge as the moment approached. On the screen, the Vryn armada gathered like a storm. 50 warships, each one capable of destroying cities. At the center, the Dominion's fist loomed. 3 kilometers of weapons and armor. It made the Betty Lou look like an insect. "Resistance forces are in position," Sareth reported from her station. "They will begin their assault on your signal." Jake nodded. His hands moved over the controls, checking everything one last time. "Danny, how's our ghost system?" "Working for now," Danny said. "But it's held together with duct tape and prayers. I give it 50-50 odds of lasting long enough. I'll take those odds." Jake looked at both of them. "Last chance to back out. Either of you wants to leave, say so now. No judgment." "Shut up and fly the ship," Danny said. Sareth showed her teeth. "I am not going anywhere, human!" Jake grinned. "Okay then. Let's go poke a bear." He pressed the comm button. "Attention Vryn, Armada. This is the cargo ship Betty Lou. We're here to deliver a message. Return receipt requested." "Did you just taunt an entire armada?" Danny asked. "Seemed appropriate." Jake pushed the throttle forward. The Betty Lou accelerated toward the armada. The stealth system wrapped them in distorted space, making them nearly invisible to sensors. They drifted with debris from an old battle. Just another piece of wreckage floating through space. The armada began to move. Ships positioned themselves in formation, preparing to jump to Cathara Prime. The Dominion's fist pulsed with power at the center. "We're halfway there," Jake said quietly. "So far so good." That was when alarms screamed. The stealth system flickered and died. Danny slammed his hand on the console. "They see us!" "Of course they do." Jake's hands flew over the controls. "Plan B. Hold on." He threw the Betty Lou into a wild spin, dodging fire from the nearest warships. Energy blasts lit up space around them. One hit the shields, and the whole ship shook. "We are going to die!" Sareth shouted over the noise. "Not yet." Jake yanked the controls hard left, and they dove under a Vryn cruiser. More shots followed them. One clipped the stern, and red lights flashed across the bridge. "Danny! Weapons!" Danny fired the stolen Vryn cannons. The shots were wild, but effective, forcing nearby ships to scatter. Jake used the chaos to push deeper into the formation, always moving, never staying still long enough to be targeted properly. Sareth watched in awe and terror. Jake did not fly the ship. He threw it through space like a weapon, with no pattern and no predictability. The Vryn could not anticipate his moves because his moves made no tactical sense. He simply reacted. moment to moment, trusting his instincts completely. Coming up on the fist, Danny called out. Shields are failing. The flagship loomed ahead, filling the view screen. Its weapons tracked them, charging up. Jake did not slow down. He accelerated. Jake, Danny yelled. I see it. Jake pushed the throttle to maximum. Sareth, target that reactor vent Danny showed you. When I say fire, give it everything. The flagship's weapons unleashed hell. Jake spun the Betty Lou through a storm of death. Blasts hit them from all sides. The ship screamed with damage alerts. Smoke filled the bridge. Now, Jake shouted. Sareth fired. The stolen weapons, all of them at once, focused on a single point. The concentrated fire punched through the flagship's shields and hit the reactor vent. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Dominion's fist shuddered. A chain reaction started deep in its core. Secondary explosions rippled along its hull. Time to go. Jake tried to turn the ship, but the controls did not respond. We're hit bad. Engines are dying. Emergency power. Danny worked frantically at his station. I can give you 30 seconds of thrust. Maybe. Do it. The Betty Lou lurched forward. Behind them, the Dominion's fist tore itself apart. The massive ship broke in half, then into pieces. The explosion consumed everything around it, destroying 3 nearby warships. But the Betty Lou was too slow. The blast wave hit them like a giant's fist. The ship tumbled, end over end. Sareth was thrown against her restraints. She heard metal tearing, alarms wailing, and Jake cursing. We're breaking apart, Danny yelled. Jake's voice was strangely calm. Sareth, Danny, get to the escape pod. Now. What about you? Sareth demanded. Someone has to keep us steady long enough for you to launch. Jake's hands never left the controls, even as sparks rained down around him. Go. No. Sareth unbuckled herself and grabbed his shoulder. We go together or not at all. Jake looked at her. In his eyes, she saw acceptance. He had been ready to die alone, but something in her words changed his mind. Fine, but we launch in 10 seconds whether the pod is sealed or not. They ran to the cargo bay. The escape pod door was stuck. Danny kicked it, and it finally opened. They piled inside. Jake slammed the launch button. The pod exploded from the dying Betty Lou just as the cargo ship began its final breakup. Through the small window, Sareth watched the ship that had become their home tear apart and scatter into the void. The pod spun wildly. Jake fought with the stabilizers until they finally steadied. They floated in space, surrounded by debris from the battle. Around them, the Vryn Armada was in chaos. Without the flagship, ships were scattering, colliding, retreating in panic. We did it, Danny said, his voice full of disbelief. We actually did it. On the pod's small radio, they heard the resistance fighters cheering. The Vryn ground forces, seeing their armada destroyed, were surrendering or fleeing. Cathara Prime was saved. Sareth looked at Jake. He was bleeding from a cut on his forehead. His armor was cracked, and he had just lost his ship. But he was smiling. Told you it would work, he said. You are completely insane, Sareth replied. Yeah, but we're alive. Jake checked the pod's navigation. Looks like we're drifting toward Cathara Prime. Should be picked up in a few hours. They sat in the cramped pod. 3 beings from 2 different worlds who had just done the impossible. Outside, the stars shone bright and clean. The armada that had threatened to destroy a planet was now just debris drifting through space. Danny started laughing. It was the kind of laugh that came from relief and exhaustion and the sheer absurdity of their survival. Soon, Jake and Sareth joined him. They laughed until tears ran down their faces. 3 warriors who had faced death and won through nothing but courage and the stubborn human refusal to give up. As rescue ships appeared on the horizon, Sareth understood something. Humans were not superior fighters. They were not stronger or faster or smarter than other species, But they had something that could not be measured or predicted. They had hope that refused to die, even in the face of impossible odds. And sometimes, that was enough to change everything. The rescue ship that found them was Catharan. When they brought the escape pod aboard, hundreds of warriors and civilians crowded around. They wanted to see the three who had destroyed an armada with a cargo ship. They wanted to touch them, to speak with them, to thank them. Sareth stepped out first. Her people pressed forward, calling her name. She was a hero now, the warrior who had stood against impossible odds. But she turned and gestured for Jake and Danny to come forward. "These are the ones you should honor," she said loudly. "These humans, who owed us nothing, who risked everything to save a world that was not theirs. They are the true heroes of this day." The crowd went silent. Then someone began a chant. Others joined. Soon, hundreds of voices spoke as one, saying words in the old Catharan language. Jake looked at Sareth, confused. "What are they saying?" he asked. Sareth felt her eyes burn with tears. "They are calling you Sky Brothers. It is the highest honor we can give. It means you are family now, bonded not by blood, but by shared battle and sacrifice." Jake looked uncomfortable with the attention. "We just did what needed doing." An old Catharan warrior pushed through the crowd. He was ancient, his fur silver with age, but his eyes were sharp. He carried a new spear, its energy core glowing bright blue. He approached Sareth and offered it to her. "The council has forged this for you," he said. "A new weapon, for a new age. Your family's spear died with honor. Let this one carry on its legacy." Sareth took the spear with shaking hands. The old warrior then turned to Jake and Danny. "And for you, humans, we offer what our people have never offered. Outsiders. A place among us. Ships, resources, whatever you need. You saved our world. We will never forget." Jake and Danny exchanged glances. Then Jake spoke. "We appreciate that. Really, we do. But we're not heroes. We're just cargo pilots who got into a fight, then be cargo pilots with a home to return to," the old warrior said. "Cathara Prime welcomes you. Always." The medical teams took them to the hospital. Sareth's wounds were properly treated for the first time in days. Jake and Danny had injuries they had ignored during the battle, bruises and burns and cuts that the doctors fussed over. They spent 3 days recovering. During that time, word of what they had done spread across the sector. News traveled through trade routes and communication networks. The story grew with each telling. 3 beings in a broken cargo ship had destroyed a Vryn armada. It seemed impossible, but the wreckage floating in space proved it was true. Other species took notice. If 3 individuals could do this, what could humanity do if they organized? The Vryn Empire, which had seemed unstoppable, suddenly looked vulnerable. On the 4th day, Jake and Danny were cleared to leave the hospital. They found Sareth waiting for them outside. She wore new armor, polished and proud, with the new spear strapped to her back. "Walk with me," she said. They walked through the rebuilt village. Construction teams worked to repair the damage from the invasion. Children played in the streets. Something that would have been impossible a week ago. People stopped to bow to the 3 of them as they passed. Sareth led them to a hill overlooking the village. From there, they could see the whole valley. It was beautiful in the afternoon light. "My commanders have asked me to stay," Sareth said. "To train the new warriors, to help rebuild our defenses. It is a great honor." "That's good," Jake said. "You deserve it." I told them no. Jake and Danny both looked at her in surprise. "Why?" Sareth turned to face them. "Because I have learned something from you humans. Honor and tradition are important, but they are not everything. You taught me that sometimes the right thing to do is the thing that makes no sense, the thing that breaks all the rules. So what will you do?" Jake asked. I will come with you, Sareth said simply. If you will have me. You want to join our crew? Danny looked shocked. But we don't even have a ship anymore. Sareth smiled, showing her teeth. About that. She pointed down the valley. Look. They followed her gesture. In a cleared field, a ship sat gleaming in the sun. It was bigger than the Betty Lou. Sleeker, with lines that mixed Ketharan and human design. Workers moved around it, making final adjustments. My people built it, Sareth explained. Using salvage technology from the Armada and human designs that Danny sketched while recovering. They call it the Betty Lou too. It is my people's gift to you, and a ship I hope to call home. Jake stared at the ship. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he wiped his eyes quickly. Well, he said, his voice rough. Guess we're back in business. What business exactly? Danny asked. We're cargo pilots, remember? Jake looked at his friend, then at Sareth. We're whatever people need us to be. Someone's got cargo that needs moving through dangerous space? We'll move it. Someone's got a problem with pirates or raiders? We'll handle it. Someone needs help, and no one else will give it? We're there. So we're heroes now? Danny did not sound thrilled. No, Jake said firmly. We're just people who help other people. That's all. No. Sareth placed her hand on Jake's shoulder. Among my people, we have another saying. The greatest warrior is not the one who wins battles, but the one who fights battles that need fighting, regardless of glory or reward. I like that, Jake said. He looked at both of them. So, what do you say? Want to see what trouble we can get into next? Danny sighed. You're going to get us killed. One day. Probably. But not today. Jake started walking toward the new ship. Come on. Let's see what this beauty can do. They walked together down the hill, three beings bound by battle and friendship. Behind them, a planet lived that would have died without them. Ahead, the stars waited with countless others who would need help, who would need someone to stand beside them against impossible odds. And somewhere in the galaxy, in a Vryn command center, a report was being filed. Subject: Humanity. Threat assessment. Critical. Recommendation: avoid engagement when possible. Final note: they do not fight for honor, glory, or conquest. They fight because someone needed help. This makes them the most dangerous species we have ever encountered. Jake Morrison, Danny Chen, and Sareth boarded their new ship. The engines hummed to life, with a sound like thunder. They lifted off from Cathara Prime, leaving behind a grateful world and carrying with them a reputation that would spread to every corner of known space. They were not soldiers. They were not heroes. They were just three people who had decided that someone needed to stand against the darkness. And somehow, impossibly, that had been enough. As they jumped to hyperspace, heading toward their next adventure, Jake smiled. He had lost the Betty Lou, but he had gained something more valuable. He had found a new crew, a new family, and proof that sometimes the craziest plans were the ones that worked. So, Danny said from the pilot's seat. Where to? Jake pulled up a star map. I heard there's a colony in the Rigel system having trouble with pirates. We're a cargo ship, Danny protested. Not mercenaries. Sareth leaned forward, her new spear gleaming. We are whatever we choose to be. And I choose to fight. Jake laughed. Rigel system it is. Let's go introduce some pirates to the concept of bad life choices. The ship jumped to light speed, carrying three warriors toward their next impossible fight. Behind them, they left a trail of legends and hope. Ahead, the universe waited, full of people who needed someone crazy enough to help them. And if there was one thing humans were good at, it was being crazy enough to try.